Islip Supervisor Angie Carpenter. I want to welcome you to our Town of Islip Stranger Danger Roundtable discussion. And I am absolutely delighted today to be joined by MaryAnn Pfeiffer, who is the CEO of Youth Enrichment Services, and three members of the Suffolk County Police Department, Officer Justin Fernandez, Officer Eiffel Ramirez, and Officer Peter Rivera. And we're really going to approach and discuss a very important topic. Officer Peter Rivera, who's a longtime friend of the town of Islip, we honored Pete back in 2018 during our Hispanic Heritage Celebration. We haven't had too many of those since COVID, unfortunately. Officer Rivera has worked closely with the Brentwood community, the CI community. He's an integral part of the COPE unit. He is known for his positive community policing, taking a leadership role in implementing exceptional community-based initiatives with local businesses, schools, and clergy across Suffolk County. He's created and worked on the Shop with a Cop program that presents students with a $50 gift card at holiday time from Target to help struggling families shop for the holidays. He's helped organize Brentwood's Community Night at Sky Zone and Movie Night. Officer Rivera has spent his career developing mutual trust with the communities he serves, and he's been essential in addressing neighborhood problems and reducing crime. And I know that Pete has worked really very closely with MaryAnn and Yes. You know, a few months ago, back in February, there was a frightening incident that occurred in the town of Babylon, where a man impersonating as an undercover police officer kidnapped two young girls. They were 14 and 16 while they were on their way to the Lindenhurst Library. The suspect was fortunately arrested and charged with secondary kidnapping, among other charges. But this brings us to the forefront just how important it is to remind ourselves of stranger danger, but also, too, how to keep ourselves and our children safe when using the internet, social media, and how to prevent dangerous situations from happening. So Pete, you know, tell me some of the strategies that parents can embark upon to keep their kids safe, because as a parent and a grandparent, that's all you want to do. You want to make sure your kids have a better life, and you want to keep them safe at all costs.
Okay, what I'm going to do right now is just go over a couple of preventative methods that you could use to talk to your kids when they're out by themselves. One thing what kids should know, usually at certain ages, they should know their name, their address, their phone number, and they should have all your contact information. And they should have your cell phone, and they should have a certain number of family member that they could call when their parents are not around, because in some cases, parents are working and they can't be there when the kids get off the school bus. So if they can't get in contact with their parents, there should be a way where they could get in contact with another family member. And also when they're walking home from school, I think as a parent, you should make sure they're with somebody. They never walk home alone, because we've had instances where there's children and they're walking home alone, and that should never be the case. They should always have a friend with them. They shouldn't walk home after dark. We have a couple of measures here that we're just gonna go over. They should, every time they go somewhere other than just going home after school, they should always ask their parents' permission when they're doing that. So when we go to a house, say a child is missing, the parent will know, oh, my child was going to basketball practice. So they should always let somebody know where they're going that day after school. And the parents, this is very important, because we've had a couple of cases where we've been on missing cases. They should always have the contact information of the child's friends, because that's always important, because every time we have a missing case, we want to contact their friends' families and their numbers, so that's good for us, so we could have more information when we're looking for somebody. And it also says here, if a child has they should have a cell phone, and on a cell phone, you should program emergency numbers always on the cell phone. And like when it comes to bus stops or like picking them up from school, it should always be an adult, because sometimes parents will send like another child to pick up their brother, their sister. It should always be an adult, because of what's been going on lately, and we just have to be very careful when it comes to this. They should never be left alone, and it should always be an adult when they're
Pete, if I could just interrupt, some of the things that you're saying kind of segues over to MaryAnn's programs with Yes in the various communities across the town of Islip. Some of these strategies I am sure you're sharing with parents. You know, Yes runs after school care programs, a summer program, a vacation academy when kids are out of school for a week at a time during recess. But aren't these some of the things that you're doing for parents of your children in the program?
We always go over, we have family nights, even during registration, we try to go over safety tips. And a couple of the things that you mentioned, Officer, about always being with an adult, the importance of having your children through middle school in an after-school program is critical. I know there was an incident recently in Central Islip with a flasher. Can happen anywhere, and it happens throughout. So when you have those instances and you say, and I'm not going to go into that particular detail, but that might be a 12 or 13-year-old where you feel comfortable, you still have to remember there are a lot of things that kids get into, and there are free programs and things that you can make sure your child is involved in. So you don't end up having a child walking home alone. It should never be, especially a child under the age of 10 is really unacceptable. But even as they get older, always have a friend. Even in high school, I know I had an incident in high school, myself and a girlfriend, and the fact that we were both there made the difference, I feel, in the situation I was in. So I think that people go, well, what age is a cell phone? And I agree with the officer. A lot of parents are against cell phones, but we find them to be something that during certain incidences have really helped. But if they have a cell phone, you have to monitor it, and I know that we're going to speak later about that. And I also know that children as young as 3 can memorize information and be able to tell. We know through 911 calls that children as young as 3 have been able to call 911 when their parent has collapsed or a grandparent. So I think that the officer is correct when we speak about knowing where they live, their name, even phone numbers. You would be surprised by the age of 3 what kids can memorize and be able to repeat. So I think all of those things are critical. And we have to keep telling parents, because we have this idea that children are helpless and they don't know, and they can remember anything. 3-year-olds are playing Fortnite, and better than I could ever play. So I think that that's important. Yes, they are very young. So we, again, focusing on how much they're aware. Do they know what their house looks like? You'd be surprised. And showing them the neighborhood so that if they do wander off, they kind of like your dog or your cat. I mean, it really is true that you want them to know where they live.
Yeah, because we've had instances where we ask them what's their address and they actually don't know. So to open that line of communication between you and your child so that he knows all that information helps us out a great deal.
Absolutely, and very young they learn it. Very young they can learn it.
Hearing you say opening that line of communication, I think that the earlier you do that, the better. And to MaryAnn's point, 3, younger than 3, really, to talk about things that you think that they're not going to remember, but they are going to remember. And it sort of sets the stage for when they get a little bit older and they're exposed to things and temptations that you don't want them going that way, to make it a situation where they always feel they can talk to you. Never be afraid to talk to parents, and if you start doing that at an early age, it hopefully will transcend to when they're older and in, middle school, and coming against peer pressure and making sure they can handle it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes.
So, and I did interrupt you, so I apologize. If you would continue along the train that you were going,
All right, while
that
we're
would be
going
great.
through this Stranger Danger program, we always tell a parent to show their child the big 3, which is the big 3 is when somebody approaches them that they don't know, you have to say no very loud. Either that, say no loud. The second one is run away, and the third one is tell a safe adult. So find the nearest adult and just scream and just say your name real out loud, and just gain other people's attentions. Because some children, they're afraid, so they don't want to yell. You have to teach your child that he has to yell. If something happens, scream as loud as you can so that he could get the attention of anybody that's around him. So
That's really a really good point. Some kids are, outgoing and won't have a problem, doing that. But I can see situations. I mean, I have 2 grandchildren. One would be in the class of, he would do and say anything, and the other would be a little bit more reserved and not so willing to start yelling. So yeah, that's really
Absolutely.
very
Actually,
practical.
when we went to the schools, we had the kids yell. I remember, Justin, we had them scream out as loud as they can.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were kind of teaching them how to scream out so that they could get other person's attention. So.
Well, we have a few seconds left. I just asked if you could wrap up on this, because
Okay.
we're going to have to go take a little break.
Okay, yeah, I just want to you have to let your kids know what a stranger and what a good person is. You have to know the difference between either like firemen, policemen, and they just have to know who they could go to if something along those lines happens, like something bad happens. And you just always, like I said, keep that line of communication open with your child and let him know that he could talk to you about anything, and that anything that happens to him, he could also, you guys could leave that line of communication open between each other. And for that section, that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you very
You're welcome.
much, and we are going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back with Officer Fernandez, who's going to touch on the subject of social media.
You are watching ITV, Channel 18, Islip Television.
Hi, this is Supervisor Angie Carpenter, and we're here today doing the topic of stranger danger, and just absolutely delighted to have three officers from Suffolk County Police Department with us, along with MaryAnn Pfeiffer, who is the CEO of Youth Enrichment Services, the YES program here in the town of Islip. And we talked a little bit about some of the safety tips for parents, and now we're going to touch on the topic of social media and the dangers affiliated with that. So, Officer Justin Fernandez, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Not only a member of the Suffolk PD, but a resident of our wonderful town of Islip, so we're delighted about that. So tell us a little bit about some of the dangers of social media.
Well, social media nowadays, people look at it as a beautiful thing, right? You get to connect with the world. I remember when social media first came out. For me, it was MySpace. Now, when I talk to kids in the schools, I say MySpace, they don't know what I'm talking about, right? And I like to think I'm fairly young, but they make me feel a little older.
Welcome to the club.
But it's a beautiful thing. You get to connect with family. But I'm starting to notice, and we're starting to notice, a lot of children, real young, getting involved with social media. And although they're having fun, it opens up to a lot of danger. A lot of these apps, such as, for example, Snapchat, the minimum age for you to actually have the app is 13 years old. I go to schools and give presentations on internet safety, and first graders have it.
Oh,
right?
wow.
We just discussed about having a cell phone and the positive of having a cell phone. And I guess parents want to give the luxury and the experience for their children to experience the technology of their time, but that could open up to a lot of danger, like we're talking about. So there's many times where I talk to kids, and they're getting involved in many group chats, and the group chats could vary from like 4 people to 40 people to 400 people. It's almost impossible for you to know 400 people from different locations, and it opens up to communicating with people you don't know, and it can be somebody posing as a child, in reality is an adult. I had some example in one middle school of 2 young boys in 7th grade, how they got a friend request from a female that they were attracted to. They've accepted the friend request. They had this whole conversation, and when they decided to do a video chat, it ended up being a grown man in his basement. Okay,
Wow.
so that's just some of the examples. I remember when I was younger, the Nintendo 64 was amazing because it was the first game console that comes with four controllers. So me and my cousins, my friends could stay in one room and play Nintendo 64 at the same time. But with the advance of technology, now you can sit in your room by yourself and connect with the rest of the world, All right. So in a way, you can see that as an advantage, some convenience. But again, it's opening the door for more danger.
You know, you touched on something, and I would ask MaryAnn to weigh in on it too. The fact that, you know, back when you were a kid with your cousins, you know, the four of you are playing Nintendo, you're in the same room, you've got the camaraderie of being together physically. And now I just find that kids are very weak in some of their socialization skills because they're not used to being around people. They're, you know, on the computer all the time, it seems. I mean, how many times have we been in a restaurant, and this drives me crazy, and there'll be a family of four sitting there, and the mother, the father, and the kids, everyone's on their phone. You know, they're sitting at the table together, and, you know, I wonder, are they text messaging each other, you know, or like, what's going on? But, you know, I know yes, you have computer labs and everything. Does that give you an opportunity to touch on some of this?
Yeah, I mean, we don't allow screen time. So even though we like that the children have a phone in case of an emergency, and not to go into all of that with school issues that go on, but yeah, we try to talk to the parents about screen time. The good thing, again, about putting a child in an after-school program is that they will socialize. The state is we're all state licensed, so wherever you're at, whether it's YES or YMCA, those are regulated. You cannot be doing screen time with the kids. I mean, you can barely show them videos or movies at this point. They want kids engaged and interacting, and I know Officer Rivera spends time in our programs, and they see that. And we have to watch our staff because it is a great babysitter. You know, even in a before school, you really don't want them on their phones. So you want them engaging with other kids. But we do find kids have a harder time socializing today than even 10 years ago.
Right.
So, you know, they're not even used to, like, when you try to get them in the room to sit down and play a video game together, because that's better interaction. It's very different. Some kids isolate more now, and it's not like it was 20 years ago where it's that kid who's just very, you know, into the, you know, they're a much more removed person. They're quiet, shy. No, a lot of the isolation is because they're not behind a screen interacting.
Okay.
And now, you know, the whole situation is exacerbated by the fact that we've spent the last year pushing kids in front of a computer screen with remote learning,
Right.
you know.
And the kids are getting, at an earlier age, they're getting used to this technology. I have a 3-year-old that she takes her iPad and she knows exactly where to go,
Yep.
what to type.
Because it's a great babysitter, too.
Right.
I'm not putting the parents down. I get
Not
it.
at
So
all.
when you're in the restaurant, you can sit and talk with the adults, and you see the 1-year-old who is, you know, 2-year-old. I mean, we have 6-year-olds in our program that talk smack, that they are on Fortnite, and then they're talking smack to each other. And if you ever listen to conversations on this online gaming, it is, they don't even know half the words they're saying because they have an older sibling in the house.
Right.
So again, it's that appropriate socialization. Their socialization is behind a screen.
Right.
And that leads to easier bullying, a different level of bullying.
Yeah.
So again, getting your kids involved in after-school programming, whether it's at a youth organization or in the school district or at a church, even the church groups, gives them time with other kids. And most of these activities do not include screen time. I'm talking even putting on a video or movie. We just are completely away from that as a reward because that's what kids want to do. They want to be with that screen.
Yes.
So I think that that's important for
And I
parents
agree
to
with you.
remember.
There's a personal story in regards to that, of being just used to, you know, the cyberspace. My little brother a few years ago, about like 8 years ago, playing the video game, his social world existed on Xbox. And my mom would see him play, and he'll always say he's with his friends, and my mom never physically seen a friend. And there was one night, I was actually at my mother's house at like 9:30 at night. Somebody knocks on the door, and my mom opens the door, and it was Domino's Pizza. So she found it odd because she finished cooking dinner, and she asked who ordered pizza, and the friend that my brother was playing with, he starts laughing, and he was able to get our home address through the IP address of the,
Oh, wow.
of the device.
Wow.
So my mom was terrified. She sent the pizza away. I was upset because I couldn't eat the pizza, But he used that technology and got that information for a joke. But you never know who was able to use that technology, that information to cause harm.
Yeah.
Like a few years ago, there was a child in Kings Park playing Fortnite. Apparently, he was really good, and he was playing against somebody who was not as well. And the person who was losing got upset and threatened to go to the kid's school to shoot him. The kid did not know that he was playing with a 45-year-old man that lived in Huntington, not too far away from Kings Park. Thankfully, he did not carry on with that act. He was arrested before that. But again, you don't know who you're communicating with, and that's only in the video game world. Parents should monitor the activity the kids are engaging in the video games, on the social media apps, who they're communicating. I know sometimes we want to give our kids freedom and to explore and find themselves, but in the time now that we're living, I remember when I was younger, it was the notice that they gave in the school of the white van that drove by of somebody offering candy, and that may still be happening, but time has changed, and a lot of the threats are coming from social media and cyberspace.
Well, I thank you for sharing all of that with us, and we're going to take a little bit of a break, and we will come back with more information on stranger danger.
You are watching ITV, Channel 18, Islip Television.
Welcome, this is Angie Carpenter, Town of Islip Supervisor, and we're having our little discussion today on stranger danger. And we're just absolutely delighted to have three wonderful officers from the 3rd Precinct Suffolk County Police Department, and also MaryAnn Pfeiffer, who is the CEO of Youth Enrichment Services, the YES program here in the town of Islip that deals with hundreds of thousands of kids every year, and you do a wonderful job, you and your staff. Right now, we're going to talk with Officer Eiffel Ramirez, who's going to discuss bad strangers and good strangers. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a very important topic, especially with what's going on in the world today. And we had that incident in Babylon a few months ago. So good strangers, bad strangers. So it's very important to talk to your kids, especially when they're school age, even before that. Good strangers, bad strangers. So we all know police. Teach them the difference between a police officer's uniform. You know, police normally we're wearing a uniform. We have our badges. We have the patches, and the patches vary from certain towns, city to Suffolk County, Nassau County. So teach them about that. We got firefighters. You know, everybody loves the firefighters. They're good. They keep us safe. They normally know the truck. Teach them the uniform. We got our EMT staff. And what they deal with the most is teachers. So they should know the teachers in their school, principals, advisors, guidance counselors, and as well as and friends. Normally they think, like I know MaryAnn mentioned, they think just because they know the parents, they're friends, but you can also have a password as well. If somebody has to pick up your child in an emergency, have a password with your child, and that they know they're safe and they can go with that particular person, because everybody, just because they know your parents, everybody's not friends. Not everybody has the best intentions.
So what are some of the things or strategies they can embark upon if they come across a bad stranger?
Right.
Someone they don't know. What do they do?
Right, as well as my partner mentioned before, Officer Rivera, they could definitely make noise, be aggressive. You could scream. That's definitely one of the things you say. Scream. If you don't know who they are and they're trying to offer you any kind of candy or anything, get in my car. You could make noise, scream, run away. That's definitely what we employ, and just don't, and always be in groups. If you are walking home alone, be in a group, be with one or more people, and don't teach your kids. Don't ever get in the car. Somebody you don't know. Don't walk away with somebody you don't know. And that starts at home, too. That starts at home, not just when you get to school.
It's got to be tough, you know, in today's environment, especially in the COVID environment. You know, people, it's tough. It's really, really tough. And with the different structure of schools now, you know, what do? People are afraid to put their kids on a school bus, so you might be seeing more kids walking to school or being dropped off to school.
I think one of the great things that have come out of the pandemic, dare I say, there have been a few levels of pollution, things that we're seeing like that, new ways of thinking about workforce, is that we're seeing more kids out. I think we've screen timed them out with the virtual.
Yeah.
I have noticed it, and I never worked from home. I continued to go to work every day, and there was that complete ghost town that happened for about 2 or 3 months. Then it got nice out and cars came back. If you remember, I know
Yes.
we were all out and about. But the interesting thing I've seen is kids on bikes again, though we could talk about bike safety. Kids are out again. And I said, well, what's going on? They used to go to school and go home and get right on, or an after-school program. I think that all the time that they're spending, especially kids in middle and high school that might only be going to school 1 day a week and are sitting looking at that smart board on the screen with the teacher's hand showing, I think that that has been a positive thing, but that also reminds us kids are back out, you know, drive more carefully. We haven't seen that in years, and I guess you guys can speak to that in communities like West Islip, Sayville, Central Islip, kids are literally going home to be on the games, and their circle of friends are the people on the internet. So I think that has been a good unintended consequence, but it also comes with things of, have we been doing as much stranger danger with middle school kids again? And as a parent, are we enforcing you don't walk anywhere alone? So yes, there's an age that they have to go hang out with their friends, like we used to do, right? Our parents were like, get out of the house. But I think that parents have to enforce that. When you start at home, they have to say, well, you know, who are you going on your bike with? Where are you hanging out? You can never be alone. And that kind of checking up on them, and they have to do it, because I was a kid and I didn't always say exactly what I was doing to my parent. So I think parents have to take that responsibility to know where your child is and take that more seriously now that kids have discovered the great outdoors again.
Yeah. And that's a really valid point, because just the other day I was passing one of our playgrounds and I was astounded at how many kids were in the playground.
It's been years
and
since I've seen that.
we haven't really seen that. So that really takes us to that point that it's an opportunity for bad strangers to be out there doing things they shouldn't be doing, and we've got to arm our kids with the tools necessary to keep them safe at all times.
And especially now with technology, we should take advantage of it, especially with phones and I know watches. There's so many apps to monitor your kids, like Find My iPhone, and other apps on other companies let you monitor everything your child does. And that's very important, and parents have to understand that you are paying for that stuff. It's not theirs, it's yours.
Yeah.
So you should know the passwords to every app they have. You should know how to navigate the app, just so you know what your child's looking at, and go through their apps on a daily basis and know where they're at. Like MaryAnn said, you should know where your kid is going at all times. I have a 13-year-old, and it's hard to do, but I always ask them, and I always tell them where you're going, who you're going to be with, and be here at a certain time, so they know that you care about them and that you're monitoring them, and they can't just run wild.
And it's caring about them, and you know, you get that, well, don't you trust me, you know. I trust you, but I love you. And I always said this to my kids, who are really old now, but that's the price you pay, you know, for having someone love you and care about you. So, you know, don't be afraid to question them. Don't be afraid to assume that they might not be telling you the truth. Make sure you have the facts. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, and especially thanking the officers Rivera and Ramirez and Fernandez for being with us today, and of course MaryAnn Pfeiffer from Yes. We're here to help, and let's keep our kids safe. They are our future.